The Kentucky high school, whose students are at the center of a video controversy, it's closed today due to safety concerns. Local authorities are also now investigating threats made against some of the Covington Catholic High students after videos shows an encounter with a Native American man in Washington. A chaperone who was on the trip says students were targeted for wearing MAGA hats and describes what happened.
I think that was one of the reasons they were targeted, and I think they were also targeted for what they stood for, which is Christianity, the right for life. We were standing there and we looked, and all of a sudden they turned their attention to our group, and they were screaming horrible, horrible things that I will not repeat to our children, not adults. They were screaming them at children.
Two Covington students are describing some of the apparent threats.
There have been many threats against our lives, against our parents. Some of these threats include that we should all be locked in the school and it should be burnt to the ground, the school being bombed, school shooting threats. It's really scary.
And Nathan Phillips, the Native American activist, saying he is willing to meet with the students, so we'll see if that happens. Jesse, I want to take a listen to an exchange on The View today, which kind of encapsulated this whole argument. Watch this.
Is it that we just instantly say that's what it is based on what we see in that moment, and then have to walk stuff back when it turns out we're wrong? Why is that? Do we keep making the same mistake?
Because we're desperate to get Trump out of office. I think that's the reason. I think the press jumps the gun a lot because we have so much circumstantial evidence against this guy that we basically are hoping that, you know, Cohen's got the goods and what have you. And so it's wishful thinking.
There you have it.
I've always said that show's filled with a lot of wisdom. What?
But no, well, because you might have a book one day,
Perhaps.
and then you might get invited to be on The View.
Very
But that was,
honest,
I think she was just saying what was on her mind, and maybe that is what happened.
It's true. I think the media tried to Kavanaugh these teenagers, and it's really inspired the rest of the country because you see this injustice, and they've turned these kids into folk heroes at this point just because of a face crime. The guy made a face and stood there and did what all adults tell young people to do at this moment. Not throw a punch, not yell, not do anything. He just stood there like this, and that was the crime. And this is a great lesson. Now, whenever you see a story in the media and everybody starts to pile on, step back, think about the Covington boys, and just wait until the facts come out. Some people are learning their lessons, and other people's aren't. I think some left-wing person went to a high school basketball photo, and the guys were going like this, and they said that's a white power symbol. No, that means someone just hit a three-pointer. Everybody knows that watches basketball. So we learned from Parkland, children are off limits. I thought that's what was supposed to be the lesson. And now you have a situation where the hat was offensive, the smirk was offensive, and this is coming from the same people that were yelling and chasing people and their families out of restaurants. So it doesn't really equate right now. And you mentioned the Indian at the top. He was not a Vietnam veteran. That came out. The New York Times had to clarify. He served during the Vietnam era.
Mm-hmm. There was the Washington Post, I think, that did that.
And the Times.
Well, maybe
they're all
because
correcting
you know why?
the story.
Because you read all these papers all day long, and so
that's on my desk.
That's how you know. Greg, David Brooks wrote a piece today talking about how we destroy lives today, and that when the story first broke on Twitter, everyone was like, "Oh, okay, so they must be racist," and then the next day it's like, "Oh, liberals must all be bad because they thought they were racist," and then it was just basically all of our biases coming out in one story.
Who's David Brooks?
He's a columnist for the New York Times, and Jesse read it earlier.
My mother's favorite author of the Times.
There are people who, even with the new information, are clinging to this like a life preserver. For example, actor, has been, Jim Carrey. This is his latest painting, in which obviously he is demonizing these teenagers. I have to hand it to him that now his pictures are as bad as his pictures. Anyway, reality. So right now what you're having is reality is crashing down. This was a left-wing fantasy. You had the perfect villains, right?
Yep.
With MAGA hats, white kids. You had the perfect victim, Catholic, at a pro-life. Perfect law and order suspect, right? You know, they just needed to have super rich parents who were architects. And then you had the perfect victim, Native American Vietnam vet who is isolated. So what happens with a story like that, it's too good to check. And between this story and the BuzzFeed story, the media is in worse shape than my liver after spring break. I don't know how you're going to come back from this.
Pretty bad.
Because it's so bad. But can I make one last point and then I'll shut up? This is a lot about the nature of social media. We don't understand how to use social media yet. The death threats, for example, are because there's a low barrier of entry for death threats. It used to be if you wanted to make a death threat, you had to call, take a risk, somebody trace your call, you get now anybody, you got 50 million people? How many million? 250 million people on the internet? At least 1% of them are psychopaths. And so they can make death threats.
There's 2 billion people on Facebook.
Yeah, so it's like, I think we do not know how to deal with this massive behemoth. Is that how you say it?
Behemoth.
Behemoth, thank you.
Close.
And it also makes people lesser versions of themselves because we don't have eye contact. We can't read each other. So I can demonize you and you can demonize me. And I can say, hey, I made a mistake. And you can say, well, that's not good enough.
And if it's something that supports your tribe or whatever your bias is, then it makes you feel better. But so here's a question, Jedediah. Everyone hates social media, but no one's getting off it. And is that because we're afraid we're going to miss something?
Yep.
Or because we're afraid we're not going to be able to police the other side? Or because we think that it's good for our own, it's where we belong now?
I think it's a little bit of everything. We're addicted to it. We're addicted to the rush.
Do not disturb.
Hashtag do not disturb. We're addicted to it. We're used to being there. We feel like if we're not there and everybody else is there, we're missing something. We feel like we need it to promote the brand. And a lot of people out there who don't have a microphone, we're lucky enough to sit here and have a microphone on television to say how we feel. Many people feel like, well, you know what? I don't work in television. This is my way to get my opinion out. Everyone kind of feels like a TV star out there. They get to say their piece. They get retweeted. They get it out there. And for all you know, somebody with a big microphone will pick that up, and now all of a sudden they become famous. In this debate, though, I have to say I appreciate the Joy Behars of the world because they are bluntly honest. She is willing to say what a lot of people in media won't say, which is that there is a mission to bring down President Trump at all costs, and they are willing to do that whether the information is true or not, and that if they see an opportunity to paint somebody with a Make America Great Again hat or at a pro-life rally or whatever the circumstance allows, if they have the opportunity to paint them as bigoted or racist or whatever it needs to be and tie them to Trump, they're going to do it. So I appreciate that. You need people like that because so many people in media, like Greg said before, they're sticking to their argument, but they're not telling you why. They're not being honest about this is a mission to take down the president. They're just saying, oh, no, we're right. These kids really are racist and fishing. They're fishing for something in their past that might indicate that. You have to be grateful for the people on the left that are telling you exactly why they're doing it and what they're doing. And you have the facts then. You know what you're rallying against.
And then it also, Juan, comes to just how we get our news and the way that news outlets sometimes pay their reporters, which is, clicks. You're measured on how many times there's a website click to your story. Does that contribute to this?
I imagine it does. I think this is a bigger story about social media. I think we're all getting played badly by this story. Because, there's more video, but we only see portions of the video. There's a new video out that says this 2 young women said these
We have that, actually.
Kids.
This is a video that says that these women said that they were being harassed by some of these students beforehand. Do we have that to pull up?
MAGA. I'm so tired already.
Yeah, so
right.
that's that.
So this is additional. Now this casts the kids in a very negative light as having harassed people previously with their MAGA hats and the language. But I think when I said we're being played badly, Dana, I'm talking about Twitter today had to suspend an account, 2020 fight. Why did they suspend this account? Well, listen to this. They publish highly polarized political content, left and right, intended to divide people. Supposedly based in California, turns out based in Brazil, and they don't exactly know who's putting it out. But they are tweeting 130 times a day, 40,000 followers. The video, which they pushed aggressively, was then bought into by mainstream media in this country. And again, the initial interpretation proved to be wrong. But at that point, they had 2.5 million people looking at this video and leaping to some kind of conclusions. I will say this, Nathan Phillips, the veteran Native American elder, said the kid has never apologized to him. He felt stared down, and he felt threatened by the kid, and he thought that what the black Israelites were up to was offensive, but he thought the kids and the Israelites were about to clash, and he was trying to be a peacemaker. So now you get people on either side, especially the right, in the fact that, hey, a lot of the initial interpretation was wrong, saying, oh, now the kids are to be protected, they're angels. I think that, boy, we as Americans, we get fragmented, divided intentionally by these people for some reason, and we play into it. We are such dummies. I don't believe it.
Maybe people have learned a lesson, but imagine what's going to happen when the deep fakes start getting out
I think, just to Juan's point, it is really about the chain of ownership of that video. It was mainstream media who picked that up and didn't vet it, and they should be held accountable. And they might be sued.
And that's why Twitter now suspended that account.